Hello, my name's Liz. Welcome to my Advantages, Disadvantages essay lesson. This is for IELTS Writing Task 2, Academic and General Training Test. Now, we're going to start off by looking at the easiest essay question that you can get in the IELTS test. And that is, what are the advantages and disadvantages? We're going to start with analysing the essay question. Then we will plan the ideas and organise them into paragraphs. Then we will write each paragraph and review it and look at the content so that we end up with a Band Score 9 model essay. When we've finished that essay, we're going to look at a different type of essay, which is, do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? And this is probably the most difficult essay to write in IELTS. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how to present a clear opinion for this essay question, because that's the key to getting a high band score. And we're going to review each paragraph again to form a full model essay for Band Score 9. And for that essay, we're going to say that the disadvantages outweigh the advantages, and that will be the view that we're going to support. When we finish that essay, I'm going to look at the alternative view. So that is when the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, and I will quickly go through that essay to show you the differences. So you will be able to write both essays. When I finish that, I'm going to review the tips for all the essays that we've looked at. Now, the tips are very important, so please watch them. At the end of the tips, I'm going to look at a 3-body paragraph essay structure and just give you some tips on that. Then we're going to look at vocabulary, and although some of you have excellent English and don't feel the need to review vocabulary, please take a look, because in the vocabulary I do explain about using idiomatic language and idioms. So make sure that you do watch that part of the video. Right, so it's time to start, and we start with what are the advantages and disadvantages. Let's have a look at the essay question that we're going to use for this lesson. Some people think that it is beneficial for children to do paid work, while others think it can be harmful for children. What are the advantages and disadvantages of children doing paid work? So here we've got the introduction of the topic, and that is children doing paid work. It says that some people think there are advantages, it's beneficial, and some people think there are disadvantages, which means it's harmful. So you've got the two sides. And the instructions, what are the advantages and disadvantages? I have many students asking me, should I give both the advantages and disadvantages? Well, of course, if you look, we've got the word and, which means both. So you have to give the advantages and you have to give the disadvantages. But if we look a little bit more at the instructions, what you're going to see is that they're not asking whether you agree with the advantages. It's not asking if you agree with the disadvantages. It's not asking you if the advantages are more important than the disadvantages. It's not asking for your opinion at all. It's only asking that you give a list, or you state the advantages and you state the disadvantages. Even if you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. Just give the information. So there's no opinion at all in this essay. Now, the instructions tell you that they want the advantages and disadvantages, and that, of course, means we have a fixed essay structure. So let's have a look at that. You will have 4 paragraphs to your essay when you have advantages and disadvantages. The introduction will contain 2 sentences, 2 statements. The first one is your background statement, and that will introduce the topic. And that means all you have to do is paraphrase the information given to you by IELTS. Then after that, you've got your thesis statement, and that has to introduce your main points, so your answer. Now, of course, it's a little bit difficult to write one sentence that contains all the advantages and disadvantages. So I will show you how to write that properly. Then you have 1 body paragraph for all the advantages, 1 body paragraph for all the disadvantages, and then your conclusion will summarize the main points. And again, like the thesis statement, it's difficult to summarize everything, so I'll show you very carefully how you can write that. So let's have a look again at the essay question. Before you start planning your ideas for an essay, you need to look more closely at the topic. Now, the topic is children doing paid work. And we have to think a little bit more deeply about what they mean by children and what they mean by paid work. So sometimes you can read an essay question and it's very clear, but other times you read it and you think, I need to consider a little bit more about what this actually means before I plan my ideas. So let's do that now. I want to look at the word children and what that incorporates, and paid work and what we mean by that. You should always analyse the words and issues in your essay question before you start planning ideas or thinking of your answer. Now, for this essay question, we have children and paid work. And paid work, you can see, means many different things. It's not clear if they're talking about part-time work or full-time work. Now, full-time work means that the child isn't going to school. Part-time work means maybe the child is only working for 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday when they're not at school anyway. Manual, the child might be working in a factory, or worse, maybe working on a building site, which is very dangerous. Or non-manual, the child might be just doing office work, something very simple and useful for their future. The child might be doing work that's safe or dangerous. The child might be doing paid work that is supervised, so it's under controlled conditions. There's somebody checking to make sure that the conditions are safe. Or it might be unsupervised, where nobody is checking the conditions that the child is working in. So you can see that if IELTS use one of these words and talk about children doing manual paid work, all the ideas for our essay will change. Or if they only talk about children doing part-time work, again the ideas for our essay will change. So you really need to look closely at the exact issues involved in your essay question. Now, for us, we've got paid work, which means we can talk about any of these issues, anything we want. So we have a lot of freedom for this essay. Now let's have a look at the word children. When your essay is about children, you need to think a lot more deeply about the age of the child. Now, the word children generally refers to children from the age of 4 or 5 to 16 or 17. At the age of 18, they're considered a legal adult. So you can see that that is a big range of ages. Now, for our essay, which is about children doing paid work, this is a very big consideration. If a child that is 16 years old decides to work for 3 hours on a Saturday morning, that's completely fine for most parents to accept, and it's possibly very good experience. But if it is a child who is only 5 years old, working nearly 40 hours a week in a factory, which of course is actually illegal, then that's something that's considered exploitation and absolutely wrong. So you can see that the age of the child has a big impact on the ideas and the information that we present. So again, if you have an essay question in IELTS that talks about young children, then we're going to use different ideas than if the essay question was about older children. So always pay attention to that. Now, this essay only says children, which means, again, we can be very flexible with our ideas, and we can use ideas for any age range. We don't need to state, we can just give the ideas. So that's very useful for us. So before we start looking at ideas for this essay question, there's one more thing that we need to prepare, and that is vocabulary. This is all about the advantages and disadvantages. So that means we're going to be talking about advantages a lot and disadvantages a lot, and we need to paraphrase that. So I'm going to give you quite a bit of paraphrasing to help you write the essay. Synonyms to be flexible when writing about advantages and disadvantages. So for the advantage, you can change it and give the adjective. So it's advantageous. A benefit can become it is beneficial. You can talk about gaining something. So children can gain experience from working. We can talk about a positive aspect, so a positive aspect of children doing paid work, or an upside. For disadvantages, we can talk about a drawback. Now, here we've got an obstacle. An obstacle is very similar to a difficulty. And for this essay, we can't actually use that. Even though it is a synonym for a disadvantage, it cannot be used in all situations. So be careful with these two. An issue and a problem, they are perfect paraphrases for each other. A downside and a negative aspect. Let me give you a few more words now to be more expressive when talking about advantages and disadvantages. We can also use these words when we're writing. Minor and major. So if you're talking about a small disadvantage, then you can talk about a minor disadvantage. Or if you're talking about a very serious, a very big advantage, you can talk about a major advantage. Serious, then you can use that for a serious advantage, serious disadvantage. Obvious means it's very clear and evident. A significant, that is another synonym for major. And the main, again, that's another synonym, the main advantage or the main disadvantage. So you can also use these words in your essay as well. Now, you've probably noticed that we haven't used pros and cons, and that's because they are informal and not appropriate for essay writing. But you can use them in your IELTS speaking test, the pros and cons of something. So now we've looked at the essay structure and language, let's have a look at some ideas before we start writing. Here are the advantages that we're going to use for this essay. So one advantage that children have from doing paid work is that they can learn the value of money. They understand that it's not free, they have to work to get money. Another advantage is that they learn to manage money, and that's all about working to earn money, saving that money so they can then afford to buy something. And a third advantage is the responsibility and independence that they can learn. So there's quite a few benefits, but is it enough? Well, this is all about getting a higher band score. Now, many students, what they do is they take an advantage, they write one sentence, firstly. They move to the next advantage. Secondly, they write one sentence. Thirdly, they write one sentence. And it becomes like a list of advantages and nothing more. So if you want to get a higher band score, what we're looking at are the supporting points for each advantage. So that means that you're going to have, firstly, you'll introduce the advantage and then you'll develop it further. And this helps with two things. One is that it provides more information about your ideas. That helps you get a higher band score. Secondly, it will also help you with your grammar and your language because you're giving more flexibility. You're giving a bigger range of sentences rather than firstly one advantage, secondly another advantage. So developing your ideas is very important. Now, what happens is that many students plan their advantages and then they start writing. But again, I want you to stop and I want you to think. You do need your supporting points. They need to be planned. So let's have a look at them now. So here we've got the supporting points. The first one, we're going to just give more information about what we mean when we say they learn the value of money. And what we're going to explain is that it teaches children that they have to work hard if they want to get money. So that's all about money not being free anymore. It's not from their parents, they have to work hard to get it. So that's an extra bit of information. For the second advantage, we're going to give an example. And that will be when older children have a part-time job. And they do this because they want to save money to be able to afford to buy something. So that's an example. Then when we look at the third advantage of responsibility and independence, we're going to look at the future. And this is a benefit that children will get when they're adults and they're ready to enter society. So you can see it really helps to have all your supporting points planned because then we can just write a sentence for each one and it will be easier to write when we do the essay. Right, let's have a look now at the other side, the disadvantages. I've got two disadvantages for this essay for why it is wrong for children to do paid work. The first disadvantage, as I've mentioned before, is that it opens children up to exploitation and slave labour. That's a really big issue. And what we're going to do, the supporting points will be an example, and I'm going to use an example of developing countries. You could use underdeveloped if you want. And I will explain that the children do not have legal protection when they're doing their work, and it can often be really tough, hard, manual work as well. And another problem with this is that they're doing the same work as adults, but for negligible wages, which means low wages. It's often a good idea when you're planning your supporting points to think of any useful language that you might want to use and make a note of it. The second disadvantage is about schoolwork. Now, if children are doing paid work, they can't focus on their schoolwork, which is a problem. And the problem will be that good grades are important for their future. You can see that we've got 2 disadvantages, but we had 3 advantages. Is it important to have an equal number? No, not at all. It's up to you. You can also see that I'm planning to have 2 supporting points here for this disadvantage, but only 1 supporting point for this one. Is it important to have a balance? Well, it's good to have a balance, but if it's a difference of only 1 sentence, that's absolutely fine. Another reason why it's good to have the supporting points planned is that when you write your essay, you should be focusing on your grammar and on your vocabulary. You shouldn't be trying to think of ideas at the same time. So get your ideas planned, then focus on your language, and that will help you get a higher band score. Right, so we have looked at the essay structure. We have looked at the issues inside the essay question. We've looked at the language that we need to use, and we've planned our ideas. So now it's time to start writing. And we will start with the very first sentence of the essay, which is the background statement in the introduction.